All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on you with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, under the category of same script, different cast, it's that time of the year in Major League Baseball when the talks for a potential contract extension between a player and a team have broken down. And the latest chapter of this revolves around the Toronto Blue Jays and their all star first baseman, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, Vlad Jr. will be 26 years of age next month, and he is looking to cash in big on the open market next winter. We are talking about a career 288 hitter in 6 years with the Blue Jays, while he also has 160 career home runs. He finished second in the American League MVP race back in 2021, and then he finished sixth last year. Okay, after his big season with the Jays, and we're talking about last year for Toronto. Vlad Jr. hit 323, 30 home runs, 103 runs batted in, and 44 doubles, which was a career high. The kid, what's going on, my man? You're saying you're just checking in. You know what? I know I see that Yankee logo in the background, my man. You definitely want to hear this because I feel like, in my personal opinion, uh, that the Jays are probably the best or the closest contender to the Yankees in that division this year, at least for now. Okay. So with Vlad Jr., okay, he addressed this issue in spring training about not being able to agree to a long term deal. And typically, we know how that plays out when guys it does they can't agree on an extension, and it's one of those where the infamous words, I want to see how the season plays out. Well, you know what, that's code for I'm ready to test free agency. And of course, in this case, Vlad basically said, hey, they have their numbers and I have mine, so we know what's coming next. Vlad's going to look the ball out this coming season, whether he plays the entire year for the Jays or part of the year with the Jays and somebody else. But at the end of the day, he's looking to cash in. And I'll tell you like this, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but for all of those Blue Jays fans out there, do not, and I repeat, do not expect to see Vlad Guerrero Jr. in a Blue Jays uniform come 2026. Yes, the Blue Jays will be willing to spend the money to keep Vlad Jr. in Toronto. But if he hits the open market next winter and a team like the New York Mets, for an example, gets involved, then guess what? Vlad ain't coming back. You know what I'm saying? Because all it's going to take rather is a squad out there with deep pockets, and they're going to be willing to give him more money than the Blue Jays might be able to. He's going to be playing his home baseball games for 2026 and going forward in a park in the United States and not Canada. So there's questions for me. Will the Blue Jays be willing? Are they going to wave the white flag on this, or will they hold out hope to get a deal done to keep Vlad Jr. in Toronto? It's one of those where I think you could see it from both aspects right there. I think that Toronto, they're holding out hope because you're talking about one of your homegrown guys that you want to see stay within your fold. I totally get it, but it's one of those where if you're Toronto, you might have to read the tea leaves and say, hey, we might not be able to keep this guy long term. If he leaves next winter as a free agent, we're not going to get anything in return. So maybe, just maybe, we try to move on from him. I think I could see two avenues on this. I could see if Toronto is not in contention for a postseason spot, that they pull the plug on the Vlad Jr. show and try to trade him and get some prospects going forward, which would definitely upset their fan base. I could definitely see them trying to ride this until the brakes fall off, kind of like the Juan Soto with the New York Yankees last year. Granted, it was a totally different situation, but nonetheless, maybe trying to see how this plays out. But then also, you run the risk of him leaving town and not getting anything back. It's one of those where clearly trading Vladdy, if you're Toronto, would bring you back some prospects. But would a team that potentially trades for him be able to make the first baseman happy in order to get a deal done and dissuade him from going out there and being involved in free agency? That's going to be a big thing. Honestly, I highly doubt that that happens as well. It's one of those possibly high risk, low reward type situation if you're a team. And this is why we see some teams basically go out there and not worry about the trade and try to get a guy in free agency where they don't have to give up the prospects as well. I think back, I want to say it was 2018 maybe. Okay, when the Dodgers made the trade with the Orioles to acquire third baseman Manny Machado right after the break, and the Dodgers gave up, I do believe, 5 prospects to Baltimore to get Machado, and of course, he still went after that season and signed with the San Diego Padres. Usually, the big market teams don't want to have to give up the prospects and still turn around and sign a guy at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But nonetheless, the ball right now is in the hands of Blue Jays general manager Ross Atkins. And of course, he and the rest of the Blue Jays brain trust have to ask themselves, what can or will they be able to do with this situation with Vlad Jr.? This issue, if you will, is not going away. It's going to be talked about all season long for Toronto. And of course, I say all season long because regardless if Vlad Jr. Finishes his season with another team, not necessarily the Blue Jays, it's still going to be something that's going to be talked about. But nonetheless, this is why we are seeing more teams, especially the smaller market teams. And of course, Toronto is not a small market team. But nonetheless, this is why we're seeing these teams, get the long-term deals done with their young stars so early on. We saw Seattle do it with Julio Rodriguez. We saw San Diego do it with Fernando Tatis Jr. Most recently, we saw Kansas City do it with Bobby Witt in order to avoid a situation like this. Vlad is in the prime of his career, okay, and you're also looking at a scenario for next winter where Vlad is going to be the top free agent on the market. And it ain't even close as far as who the second guy is in, that aspect. So, like I said, I think Vlad is going to go out there. I think he's going to ball out. He's probably going to be in some of the best shape of his career, possibly this year. I thinking so. But nonetheless, I think he wants to go out there and put himself in the quote unquote best possible position to cash in and potentially get maybe that 10 or 12-year type deal that we have seen the superstars of Major League Baseball get in free agency in recent years. So at the end of the day, they're not going to talk about it anymore because Vlad doesn't want to talk about it. I'm sure if the Blue Jays could, they would get this deal done tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it simply ain't happening. I think Toronto will play it out and see how Vlad plays. Also, their chances for the postseason as the season progresses. But nonetheless, this is going to be a hot topic, especially the closer that we get to the trade deadline over the summer, regardless if the Blue Jays are in contention or not. But nonetheless, for all of you fans out there of the Toronto Blue Jays, whether it's September, October, June, July, wherever, you got to savor these moments that you're going to see of Vlad Guerrero Jr. in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform. I am highly, and I mean highly doubtful that he remains with the team. I know Toronto has tried to make big splashes in free agency recently. They were players in trying to get Shohei, even though I think Shohei just probably used them to go to the Dodgers. And that's my opinion. And I feel like the same thing with Juan Soto as well as Pete Alonso this year, as both of them ended up with the New York Mets. So Toronto's going to give it everything that they have. I totally understand that. But at the same time, they need to be practical about this. Vlad Jr. is not going to be with this team in 2026. Regardless if you are going to be in contention this summer or not, I think you need to cut your losses, try to get back some prospects, and see what else you can do going forward. Vlad Jr. laid down the gauntlet and basically said, "Hey, I'm not talking about this year," and we know what that means. So at this point, if you're the Blue Jays, are you going to run the risk of allowing him to leave town scot free and not getting anything back, or are you going to try to get some prospects back and try to look towards the future? The choice is yours. But nonetheless, Vlad Jr. is about to hit the open market as he is looking to cash in. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, also, if you're on the X, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. The kid, what's going on? Once again, thanks for chiming in. Like I said, this Vlad Jr. news does affect your beloved New York Yankees. Like I said, I think Toronto is going to be the top team that pushes the Yankees for first place in the AL East this year, in my opinion. But of course, a Vlad Guerrero less Toronto Blue Jays team, should they decide to trade him, would definitely change the tenor of that. And like again, like I said before, it's one of those where I know people, once they heard the news about Vlad Jr. today, right off the bat, they're linking him possibly to the New York Mets. I think that is a very strong possibility. Remember, they only gave Pete Alonso, it's a 3-year deal technically, but he can opt out after this year. Okay, and maybe they go and look at Vlad Jr. For first base. Maybe they try to bring back Pete as a designated hitter. I'm not sure how that would work, but nonetheless, anytime you can get the Mets or the Dodgers or even the Yankees uh, in the bidding war for a player, it's definitely going to drive up the value. But nonetheless, this whole thing with Vlad Jr. is not going away, and I guarantee you, it is going to be one of the top stories for the upcoming MLB season. But nonetheless, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.